Welcome to the Celestial Saga channel. Imagine you are on an ice planet prison where human warmth is a resource for survival. Today we will tell you the story of the struggle for freedom, where allies become enemies, and the choice between life and death depends on a single moment. Quiet. Here comes the human, I heard. I know, Lyric sneered. Then be quiet. We both crouched low by the cliff's edge, flat against the ground, our eyes scanning the frozen wasteland ahead of us. I'm going to need every detail I can get, I muttered. Just do your job, she snapped. I will, I said, feeling her pushiness. Now shut up. Below us, the prison gang was as loud as ever. They weren't just rowdy this time, though. They were aggressively rowdy. They stomped their boots on the ice, half to stay warm, half because they were excited. Lyric grinned, her pale gray skin and small horns blending effortlessly with the icy rocks behind her. Those savages might just eat the human before we get to her, she remarked, her voice laced with a dark amusement. The thought sent a chill through me. Don't say that. I've seen it, she said coldly. Spend a couple of years on this hellhole of a prison planet, and you see plenty of things. I adjusted my jacket tighter around me. Well, I trailed off, wishing I didn't have to endure it much longer. Don't blame me for not sticking around longer than I have to, I muttered. Oh, I'm leaving this planet with or without you, she replied with a sharp glance. Her eyes, filled with such intensity, seemed to pierce right through me. There was something unnerving about the way she looked at me. I guess a prison planet can do that to a person, I remarked dryly. You better not be lying about how sharp you are, Lyric said, her voice low but serious. All right, I responded. I hear them. I wish I were lying about how sharp I am, I thought bitterly. Decades of brainwashing in the Galactic Special Forces had its upsides, sure. But the negatives, those stuck with you forever. Even if they kicked me out and abandoned me, their mark would never leave my mind. I don't hear anything, Lyric muttered, adjusting herself to lie even lower against the ice. Shut it, I hissed. All I could hear were the yells from the idiots down below. The crowd below was a mix of various alien species. Just like us, I was a Drexy, one of those small blue-skinned creatures from a backwater planet I couldn't even name. The Empire had always taken great pleasure in abducting our youth, shaping them into killers. Look, Lyric pointed. From one of the narrow ice valleys, a line of gang members started to emerge, dragging along a long, interconnected chain. They chanted as they marched, slowly bringing their prize into the open white expanse. There she was, a human small, with a shaved head, and most shockingly, not wearing a heavy coat or layers of warm clothes. Nothing to shield her from the cold. Nothing at all. Of course, that's why we're after her, I muttered under my breath. Humans, little heat engines perfect for a frozen planet. I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. They're smaller than I expected. You've never seen a human? Lyric asked, raising an eyebrow. Of course not, have you? She shrugged nonchalantly. A couple, maybe. There was something odd in her tone, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. Watch, she added. I was already making mental notes. She's our ticket off this hellscape, don't miss anything. A huge, horned alien lumbered out from the group behind the humans. He was massive, almost dragon-like, walking on reverse-jointed legs. His eyes were hollow, dark like ice caverns. Listen, he bellowed, listen up. I stiffened. That's the captain? Celestine Frost? Lyric scoffed. That's his pet, they call him Rook. That thing wouldn't hurt us if it tried. I wasn't so sure the crowd quieted under Rook's roar. Then a small bug-like creature with 6 arms appeared from behind the giant. His back was bent, a small shell adorned his back, and he wore a tall, ragged top hat, with a few scraps tied to his chest like war medals. My soldiers, his voice squeaked, carried by the wind. I bring you another fine spoil of war, a gift from my magnificent war mind. The crowd responded in unison, raising their arms and chanting, Blessed is the war mind! Blessed is the war mind! I shot Lyric a concerned look. She just shrugged. You'd be crazy too if you'd been stuck here for decades. You're not crazy. I'm just not the kind of crazy you think. Insanity should be private, in my opinion, I muttered. The captain's voice boomed. For our great army, we now have the greatest weapon on this planet, a human, a living engine. Cheers and roars filled the air. The human stood silently, her head down, her dark eyes scanning the crowd. There was something hidden in those eyes, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I couldn't ignore it. Sergeant Crix, the captain called a hefty, fat alien, waddled up, covered in scraps like the others, but with less flair. He had a ridiculous fake mustache that looked like it had been stolen from some poor creature's fur. He carried himself with an exaggerated sense of importance. "Yes, sir," he said weakly. "For our victory, every soldier gets 5 extra minutes in the lungs," the captain announced. 5 whole minutes. "Of course, sir." Crix nodded enthusiastically. The crowd went wild. The crowd erupted into a frenzy, pushing and shouting in excitement. The captain was one of the few gang leaders on this forsaken planet who controlled a hotspot, a small room where steam leaked up from the planet's core. The rooms were tiny, and hot was a relative term, but they were the only places offering any relief from the cold, especially during the brutal storms. The captain raised his hand dramatically. "With this human, after we're done with it, we'll control 20 hotspots." More cheers followed. Lyric smiled slowly. "Sure you will. Let's not get cocky." "Cocky is the fun part," Lyric grinned. "The fun part is getting the hell off this rock." My training gnawed at me. It felt like a terrible hand tightening around my throat, pushing me to resist foolish thoughts and plans Cocky kills. The captain paced around the human, her chains and restraints a stark contrast to his grand, ridiculous regalia. He placed one of his small hands on her forehead, smiling as he did. "Hot as a tank engine. Incredible," he exclaimed. He turned suddenly. "Where's my engineer?" A chilling silence swept through the crowd as his words echoed. Everyone stepped back from the cracks of a cliff high above, close to us, but across the field, a spindly, monstrous figure crawled out. It looked like a giant spider made of scales and rock, its 8 legs carefully descending toward the crowd. It stood well over 10 feet tall, even towering over Rook. It approached the captain, its many eyes focusing in on him, while 4 mandible-like arms tucked in tightly against its bulbous body, jittering. "This is it." Its voice sounded unnervingly excited. "This is the human?" The crowd seemed uneasy, but the captain was unbothered. "Yes, yes," he puffed out his chest. "We'll use its heat to power our army, yes?" If the creature could have licked its lips, I'd swear it did. So many things can be done with that body. So many hot-blooded. How rare, how rare. It paused. Not many hot-bloods left in the galaxy. Lyric winced. "It's just as bad as the rumors. Looks horrible." "Those things are called ice terrors," she explained. "They're native to this planet, but they're not intelligent beasts. They usually prey on straggling prisoners in the outer cracks, but this one's different. The rumor is the Empire experimented on it, trying to make the predators smarter." "Because this place isn't awful enough," I muttered. I shrugged and loosened my shoulders. "Let's not screw this up, and we won't have to worry about it anymore." "Have you seen what you need to see?" Lyric asked, her eyes scanning the crowd below. I focused, working my way over each member of the crowd, each strange alien in the snowfield. "As much as I can," I replied, trusting my instincts. "I want better than that." "You want the truth?" "That's the truth," I said. "Now don't tell me what I want." She glared at me, hoping the silence or tension would force me to say something more. "You don't know what's at stake here. You've only been here a week. If we screw up kidnapping that human..." She trailed off, her thoughts lost. "I don't screw up. You obviously did if you're stuck here." I kept quiet, not bothering to respond below us. The ice terror had wrapped the human in more chains and was dragging her away. The captain and Rook had already left, and the crowd began to disperse, trying to avoid freezing to death in this hellhole. "All right," Lyric said, stepping away from the edge. "Ready?" I checked my gear. It was old and worn, and I couldn't help but scowl at it. "I suppose," I muttered. "Hey," Lyric called as she scanned the horizon. "You know how long it took me to gather all of this?" "I don't want to hear it," I replied, standing beside her. The calmness of the mission was starting to set in. "Lead the way." We wound our way through icy passages and jagged cliffs. The planet was a maze of rock and hell, broken only by vast, empty snowfields. Most gangs hid in cavern chambers, the only safe places from the brutal wind. We passed several souls, shivering in corners or already frozen. I'd learned they called it taking the deal, when someone gave up and let the ice take them. It was the grim hope that they'd die and go to hell, where they might feel warmth again. Most chose it after about a year. The rest were, as Lyric said, nuts. Lyric moved a boulder, revealing the entrance to a tunnel in the mountain. At the end of a narrow ice corridor, lit only by a faint glow, stood a solid rock door. Lyric knocked lightly. Flint! Flint! You still there? There was rustling behind the door, followed by a few falls and clatters. The door creaked open, revealing a blind, mole-like creature covered in as many shirts as he could fit. His clothes were ragged and holey, draped in layers that looked like a long dress. Lyric. He half turned toward her. Are you ready? Right here, she replied. Flint turned fully to face her, his voice soft and careful. Oh, sorry, is it time? The tunnel's ready, he said, his clawed hand caressing the wall. I felt the terror enter his chamber with the human. Just before you arrived, all is ready, all is right. She looked back at me. All right, I've got you here. Now you get us the rest. You're not done yet. I've done my part perfectly so far, I said calmly. I'm going to finish it perfectly too. I nodded, breathing deeply, preparing myself for the next step. My skin crawled. My veins shuddered with anticipation. It was mission time. I looked down at Flint. Show me the tunnel. Yes, yes. He motioned me toward his squat burrow and pointed at one of the cylindrical holes in the rock. Follow this for 326.32 yards, and you'll reach the end. After that, just... He tapped his claws against the rock, miming smashing them. Should be thin enough to break apart all good. All right. I said nothing more. No goodbyes, no good lucks. Just head first into the hole to begin my crawl. It was wide enough for me to move prone, but too narrow to squat. I slithered through the dark curves until I reached the end, and there I heard it, the creature, toiling behind the rock. Flint's words echoed in my head. The human will be put to a machine, and the machine will draw keen from the human. So sweet blood, oh so sweet. I pressed my ear against the cold ice, patient, waiting for the perfect moment. Just as I expected, a low rumble echoed in the distance, a distinct shake of an explosion. It was the perfect distraction. All right, Lyric, you're proving yourself quite the ally. I heard the creature's legs tapping on the hard ice floor. Creatures want to pull me away from the great blood battery. They can't see the holy wonder. It scurried from its chamber, chasing the source of the noise with eager, predatory instinct. I wasted no time. As soon as I was sure it was out of earshot, I smashed the thin ice. I fell into the laboratory, crashing onto the hard ice floor. The room was large and round, carved entirely from the ice and rock by the terror. Horrible devices and twisted metal contraptions hung from strings and chains. Bloodstains splattered the floor in patchwork patterns, and the smell made my stomach turn. A growl came from the corner. I turned and saw her, tied to a rolling contraption, already being drained of blood. She glared at me, furious, her mouth clamped shut by a metal muzzle. Bingo, I rushed over. Not bothering with gentleness, I ripped out the tubes and needles, letting her blood spill across the floor. I glanced back at the door, anxiety mounting, and kept moving quickly. I shot off all her bonds, prioritizing speed over care. Look, your go! She slammed a fist into my chin and sprang off the rack. I stumbled back, dizzy, blood dripping from my face, staring at her in disbelief. Are you serious? I gasped. She growled, her body low in a crouch, the muzzle still over her mouth. I pointed at the door. You realize that thing is going to come back any minute and kill us both, right? Your best bet is coming with me. She glanced at the door, then back at me. Without a hint of exaggeration, she nodded and shrugged as if to say, sounds like your problem. I raised my gun. All right then, easy way or hard way. You choose. She chose suddenly. She started breathing heavily, almost panting. I could tell it was purposeful. The mission was clear in her eyes as her chest rose and fell. I took a stunned step back, stars. She was steaming, vapor billowed from her like little puffy clouds, hot as a furnace. Her face reddened, her skin began to sweat. Even in the freezing cave, she was commanding her body to produce heat, and lots of it, too much. I don't know what you're doing, but we need... Before I could finish, she darted off in one direction, moving faster than I could keep up with. I swung my gun to follow her, but before I could fire, she snatched up a bloody knife and lunged at me. I had to lower my weapon to avoid the slash, barely skimming by. There was no time to think. She jabbed again and again, furious, too fast to react. The heat pouring off her kept me on the back foot. I had been trained since before I could remember, killed more than I cared to admit, and honed every ounce of killer instinct the Empire had to offer. And still, I was too slow. She caught me once, slashing open my chest and sending me crashing to the floor. I rolled and sprang to my feet, but she kicked me back into a wall. I raised my gun, but she sent it flying, knocking it across the floor. Stop this! I shouted, scrambling back. She jabbed at my head, planting the knife in the ice as I scrambled to the side. "We need to leave, damn it!" Then we both heard it, the dreadful skittering of spider legs on rock. We turned toward the door, watching as the terror's long, ominous shadow stretched across the room. Its eyes were wide with excitement, its mandible hands shaking in anticipation. "What have we here? A thief of the bloody battery?" So sad. I pointed at her, more upset than anything. "This is your fault," she growled. The terror slipped past the door, its legs stretching out, looming over us like a deadly mountain. "Punishment for disturbing the holy process is death. I will deliver the captain your wretched bones." My gun was about 8 yards away. I had to grab it. I shoved the woman toward the spider while she was distracted, then dove for my weapon. The spider charged toward me, but it was met by the stumbling woman. She carried her momentum and skillfully navigated between its legs, confusing the creature as it tried to grab her. I picked up the rifle and fired off the clip into the creature. The room lit up with the sound of gunfire. The hot muzzle flashes reflected off the blue ice, turning the room into a bright, blinding battlefield. But each bullet just bounced off its hard carapace and fell to the ground. "Shit! No, no, no!" The creature turned back toward me and lunged. I barely had time to jump out of the way. Reloading as I slid under a metal table, I quickly aimed at the beast, just as the woman jumped from a chair and slashed at its eyes with her knife. She managed to catch one, and the creature hissed, retreating with a flurry of swipes. "The eyes?" I asked her, aiming my weapon as it recovered. She growled in response, but I took it as an approving one. I planted 5 quick shots into its face, each bullet taking out another black eye. It screamed, writhing in pain. "You think all I have is sight?" It roared, then jumped toward me with terrifying speed. It kicked me away with one of its legs, sending me crashing to the ground. "You weaklings all smell of wretched fear." I tried to aim and fire again, but the creature wasn't giving us a moment's rest. It darted between us, swiping and diving, never letting either of us catch a breath. In the background, I heard explosions. Lyric's last-ditch effort to give me more time. "We need to get the hell out of here." Just as the terror lunged at the woman, instead of dodging, she dove straight into it. The creature went to grab her, but she ducked her head to the side just enough to have it slam into her muzzle, breaking it and sending her spinning toward the ground. She hit the ice, blood splattering from the impact, but she quickly shouted, "The mouth!" I didn't waste a moment. I raised my gun and aimed at the beast as it charged me. Its mouth opened slightly to catch air, just long enough for me to fire a bullet. It struck its throat, sinking deep into the back of its neck. The creature recoiled and hurled up purple ichor blood. Gah! It swiped at its own head in agony. I looked down at the woman, both of us panting and battered. "Can we go now, damn it?" I asked, frustrated. She carefully stood and wiped the blood from her jaw. "It's not dead." "Not my fucking question," I snapped, still angry. "I don't think a planet buster would kill that thing. I'm not trading one prison for another." She pointed at the creature. "Me or it? That simple? Neither, come on." I think she'd already proved that I couldn't take her unwillingly. "What do you want me for?" I demanded. "I don't have time for this. Answer me." I shifted on my feet. Lyric had been vague with the details, and I honestly hadn't wanted to know. I was just happy to have some kind of plan to escape. Beggars couldn't be choosers. I nodded. "To get off this planet, another blood engine?" "I don't know." A noise came from the hole I fell through. What the hell is going on? It was Lyric, covered in black smut and blood. She clearly had been having a rough time and was tired of waiting. "Let's go." She dropped from the hole and pointed to the hallway. "Seconds, people! I'm not wasting a single one! Let's go!" "What do you want me for?" The woman stood stoic, unfazed by the chaos around us. Lyric looked at me, then back at her, wide-eyed. "Seriously?" I shrugged. I already tried the forceful route, no dice. "This was your job, damn it." Lyric snapped. The woman growled, "Answer me." "A device," she admitted. No hesitation. "One made to harness your heat and hopefully get us off this planet." "That's not it." I was getting antsy. "We have to go, guys." The creature was still coughing up blood, but each one could easily be the last it needed to clear its lungs. "Not until she says the rest." "Rest of what?" I asked. "I'm not the only one, am I?" I started to catch on. "What?" Lyric sneered, her neck tense. "Obviously, one human isn't enough to power a ship." She gestured to the woman. "She's the last one we need. One more heat battery and we have all the humans we need to leave the atmosphere." I blinked, stunned. and at a loss. What do these batteries do? Kill us, the woman said, horrifyingly calm. Slowly and painfully, I've seen it. I've been running from it my whole life. I tilted my head. Whole life. We'll all die on this planet anyway. Lyric looked at me with wild eyes. Shoot her in the legs and we'll carry her quickly. I hesitated, looking at the woman and her small frame. So much power was packed into her, so much energy and potential, and yet so much pain. Come on, Lyric screamed. Don't tell me the trained assassin is having second thoughts. Do you know how many have died just to get one human? Do you know the sacrifices made? The terror screamed, clearing out what sounded like the last of its blood. The woman locked eyes with me. I'd sooner die on my feet than let my life be sucked away, she said. A swirl of emotions overtook me, and bright, vibrant memories of my past rushed forward, like flashes from grenades without thinking. I tightened my grip on my gun. I know what it's like to be used to be nothing more than a tool. Lyric sighed in disbelief. You're kidding! She looked at the creature, then back at me. You have to be ruthless to survive here. Ruthless. I met the woman's gaze. The understanding between us deepened, a shared understanding that ran deeper than words ruthless. Some things in life, your soul decides. Some things you cannot fight. I can do that. Without a second thought, I shot Lyric in the knees, sending her to the ground with screams. Just then, the terror turned its head to us, mouth dripping with its own purple innards, eyes full of rabid hunger. The woman nodded to me, and together, we bolted through the entrance. We raced through the hallways, dodging screams and the sound of soldiers rushing toward us. Lyric's shrill, angry voice echoed from the back room. You idiot! You complete idiot! The terror screeched behind us, and I could only imagine what happened next, but I didn't care. Neither did the woman. I knew that for sure we were charging headfirst into battle now. We'd have to kill. We'd have to fight, and it wouldn't be easy, but that was fine. The two of us understood now. We knew in our very souls. The fact was clear. We would find our freedom on this prison planet, and neither of us would settle for anything less than the real thing.